Hello everyone, it's Jason again. Now I actually thought that I'd take you through some of the things that I like to do on my phone to relax. One of the things I like to do is look at some of the suggestions that I get on Quora. Quora is quite neat in that way because you just have people like ourselves who just ask these questions to the forum, and you get people giving their attempts at answering it, and the answers are always quite interesting. And sometimes I like to formulate a bit of an answer before I read the submitted answers. So I'm just looking here, this was sort of suggested to me. It says spoiler. It's no spoiler for me because I've actually seen all the Marvel movies. It says, how come Doctor Strange can defeat Dormammu, however you say his name, but not Thanos? But first of all, the one thing to remember is that this is a movie, so what happens in the movie is not necessarily what happens in real life because it's all fiction. But let's assume under this paradigm that actually Doctor Strange does have this ability, of time, and that he can do what he can do. So let's contemplate for a minute, what would that mean? Well, in the film Doctor Strange that I see in the 2016 released edition, we have Doctor Strange formulate this sort of time loop. He doesn't defeat Dormammu per se, more so he frustrates him. He gets him into a frivolous and fruitless endeavour of constantly destroying him, retaining the recollection of destroying him. That's Doctor Strange being vanquished by Dormammu, and just respawning every time that he's vanquished. Now, I think that once you even your let's put it this way, even your worst enemy, if you had the worst enemy in the world, right, someone you really really hated their guts, after killing them maybe 10 times, you start to get fed up. Maybe you get a bit of catharsis killing them second or third time. But come the 10th time, you're like, right, okay, you're just becoming my enemy for the simple fact that I'm having to keep on killing you. And it's like this paradox. So in the end, Dormammu just gave up. He just decided to get out of the time loop. Now, what we observe in, well, I don't know if anyone watched Infinity War, but at least in part one, what's his name? Thanos. Well, he acquires the time stone. So unfortunately, Doctor Strange isn't going to be able to use his Agamemto stone to trap him in a time loop. Perhaps that's what he should have done. He did actually have a rather powerful means of doing that. If he'd done that, it would have made for a very quick film. But of course, the Marvel writers don't want that. They want to drag it out to this and milk it along this long franchise and keep us all entertained with complicated interwoven plots. So I think that would be a good conclusion to make for that one. Let's see what else we've got. What I do not know what that means. In Harry Potter, what is Snape's Boggart? Okay, so just to be clear, a Boggart is that which manifests itself as something that you would fear the most. Quite an interesting concept that Miss Rowling came up with there. And as somebody who's both watched all the films and rather recently read the books, I can conclude that having got into the psyche of Snape, his greatest fear really would be a visualization of Lily being fucked by James Potter. I think that would be his greatest fear. Almost like what we see at the ending where Ron is kind of like being tormented by 1/7 of Voldemort's soul because it's showcasing Harry and Hermione snogging, something that he wasn't so fond of. What have we got here? It says, if the US invaded, conquered, and annexed the UK, how would the rest of the world react? I don't know how the rest of the world would react, but I know how I'd react. I'd be very pleased. I'd think, oh great, now I get to be a US citizen after all. If we can add us to as the 51st state of the United States, that'd be great. We'll call ourselves Britain, the state of Britain, and we'll have our own flag. We already have our own cultural identity as a state, and we can all unite under the supposed freedom that America was apparently founded on. What have we got here? It says here, what would happen if a grain of sand hit the Earth's atmosphere at, say, 99.9% of the speed of light? Will there be an explosion of epic proportions? Well, let's consider what that means. Well, we all know that the speed of light is 297. We all know that the speed of light is 200. Give me a moment to remember the speed of light. Is it 299,790,458 meters per second? We all know that that's the speed of light, or as we like to call it, 3.00 times 10 to the 8 meters per second. Now, at that speed, a grain of sand, let's consider that 1 gram of sand, one grain of sand is 1 gram. Well, what would that mean? Well, that would mean that if we take the mass of the gram as one, hang on a minute, let me pause this a sec. Okay, sorry, I just have to take a minute to contemplate this. Right, so remember that force equals mass times acceleration. Now we have a bit of a piece of sand colliding into the atmosphere. What that means I don't know, because this, the atmosphere is just gas. But let's assume that something solid hits it and deaccelerates this grain of sand from the speed of light down to 0. Let's say that the force then tends towards something like 300 million newtons. That's a large force, come to think of it. Yeah, I'd say 300 million newtons being struck by the Earth would probably be a mass extinction level event, like which the 5 mass extinction events in our human history has never seen. Let's, if we're talking about 9 milligrams, maybe if we're going to assume that a grain of sand weighs 10 milligrams, then we'd scale that down by a factor of 100. So we'd only have 300,000. Still pretty powerful, 300,000 newtons. So let's have a look what they predict. So the effect would be even less spectacular than an explosion of an airliner. That's a great thing with Quora. You can sort of suppose answers that are totally false and then get someone to correct you. There we go, let's read this. Why is it that Captain America's vibranium shield is almost indestructible, but on Black Panther, the vibranium cars are destroyed so easy? Are there different types of vibranium? Well, if there were different types of vibranium, we'd have to actually explore the isotopes of vibranium. So let's say we were to refer to our beloved periodic table up there, and we were to go to where the only place where we could fit another element would be like element 119. Let's pretend that this vibranium is somehow a stable configuration of 119 protons and then any number of neutrons that deviate from that. Well, the different types of vibranium would either be heavy vibranium or lighter vibranium or just standard vibranium, either of which would be kind of irrelevant. Each would only go to support its stability over the long run. But what we also have to consider is that even if it were the case, it's not one to be taken lightly because vibranium just doesn't exist. There is no VB on the periodic table. There's vanadium, but not vibranium. There we go. Let's have a little look at this. What do you think Loki? So we all know Loki. He is the brother of Thor, the bit of a clowning around fool. Kind of has an endearingness to him. Says Loki meant by the following: I assure you, brother, the sun will shine on us again. It says, and he's surmising, was he just trying to be positive, or did he genuinely believe they stood a chance against Thanos? I do not attribute intent on behalf of somebody else unless they make it explicit, but if we are to try and infer from his phrase, it would seem that quite clearly he's just trying to kind of inject a little bit of optimism into them. Now, there's this old saying by General Ford. He is the founder of Ford Cars. He's the one who made them. And he said that whether you think you're wrong or right, you're absolutely right. In essence, if you have a positive mentality going forward, then you at least set yourself up for the chance of succeeding. If you write yourself off right from the beginning, then you have doomed yourself from the start. So, who is the most evil character in Harry Potter aside from Voldemort? Well, I didn't actually think Voldemort was all that evil, come to think of it. But if we were to consider an evil character, well, I think Dumbledore. I think Dumbledore was certainly the most evil one. I actually pegged him as the most evil one. I know everyone always thought Snape was evil, but come the end, we see that actually Dumbledore was like this manipulative, skiving old man who was hell-bent on trying to raise Harry, as Snape most eloquently puts it, as a pig for slaughter. He wanted to have Harry as be this thing that was forced to sacrifice himself for everybody else. That's what Dumbledore was always about. He never ever made public his intents until the very end. Only when Harry had no choice, everyone was banking on his acceptance of suicide. That's what Dumbledore did. He's just like, Harry, It's been a great 18 years or so. I've tried to make your last years at Hogwarts pleasant, but I've got to ask for a favour. Can you go and kill yourself? Oh, that was funny. I suppose let's see what people actually have to say for this. The most evil character. So somebody seems to think that this fellow is the most evil character. I think the most evil character, if we're talking about maniac kind of character, then Bellatrix Lestrange could also come quite well. Maybe the most evil female character, if it's divided by gender lines. Because I mean, look what she's like. She just kills people for fun. She enjoys it. I'm sure she would have just loved to have been the one killing Harry. If Voldemort wasn't the big man in town, she would have been the one to cast the Avada Kedavra. She would have went, Avada Kedavra! I'm sure she wouldn't have had Banana come out of rage, but there you go. Don't know about that one. So it says here, can an airline crew detect if a cell phone is left on? I'd have to say yes, because every time I've ever been on a plane and I've tried to sneak the use of my phone on it and use it, somehow, somewhere, a stewardess has suddenly popped her head through it and be like, sir, can you turn that off, please? You're going to crash the plane. Where we got here? Don't know who Peter Quill is. So it looks like I've essentially been through enough of this. We've got, let's do this last one of maths. We've got if x over 2 equals 4, what is x? Well, that is quite obviously 8. All you do is times the whole thing through by 2 and you get 8. Yeah, so that was a quick. If you enjoyed that little session, I hope you did. I quite enjoyed it actually. It was quite jovial. Of me going through some recent Quora sort of topical news stories and just reading out my thoughts as they come out as I'm reading. Then yeah, comment, ask if you want more. That was quite funny. Bye.